everybody. It's Wednesday. Welcome to the Witches Movie Coven. Yep, 5 witches talking about witches in movie. Grab a drink, grab your goat, and let's talk movies. This week we are talking about the 1989 movie Warlock. And I think we all have a lot to say about it, but let me introduce my co-host. I am Patti Negri. You might know me from The Witching Hour and whatever else. And we are also here with Heather Greene, the ultimate expert on witches in movies, Ghostbait herself, Courtney Buckley, the gentleman psychic Richard-Lael Lillard, and everybody's favorite pretty blonde Jason Mankey.
I feel so loved.
You are so loved. So does anybody have anything to fill in before we jump into the movie or jump?
Okay. I have something. As we know, I have an addiction and cannot be controlled, and every week I order something new on mysterycontrol.com. And this week's purchase is probably my favorite one so far.
Hey, I know that handsome devil.
Isn't he handsome?
I know that handsome devil.
Yeah, I know him too. So he now lives on my couch so he can be near me all the time. And I can hug it when I miss you. So
well, everyone who wouldn't want to wake up next to that? I mean, I do every day.
So there's all different sizes too. I ordered the biggest one. But if anybody else wants one, you can get it at mysterycontrol.com.
I'm waiting for like the body pillow size.
Yes, I did look for that. And
oh
no!
Well,
that's correct.
Well, I'm going to the gym now, so maybe I'll be a lot more firm.
Don't be a squishy pillow.
This is going to be the greatest episode of this show that we ever do tonight. I can just already feel it. I can feel it.
I had never seen it before. I watched it 2 days ago. That's all I say. So, Heather, do you want to do your movie facts kind of stuff before we
Sure. Thank you. First, before I do that, I'm so glad to be back. I was in Minneapolis for a week. I was just going to add, and I got to do some fun things like go back to Paisley Park and see Prince's home and studios, which I adore, and some other really super fun stuff, and get to see my coworkers up at Llewellyn and, continuing working on some amazing new books. Please always check out my social media to see what books are coming out, because I just posted a bunch of new witchy books that will be coming out this fall, but I got to be up there, and I love going on trips. So that was super fun, but I missed everybody last week, and I heard you had a great show. So I am back, and I am ready to put this wonderful movie that we all watched into context. So let's set our minds back to 1989. We are now all in the middle of the Satanic Panic. And that should, if you've been following the show since we started, you've heard my lectures on the Satanic Panic and what it is. Basically, to cap it off, this is the middle of the period of time. So really, this is when Hollywood first got its artistic hands on this cultural phenomenon we were experiencing. So really one of the first movies you see is in 1987, when you start to see Hollywood dabbling in, so to speak, negative portrayals of witchcraft, witches killing children, satanic witches, etc., etc. We move out of fantasy witches into this in the 1987 night. So this film lodges itself right at the perfect time. We're at the height of the Satanic Panic. Everybody's terrified that children are being eaten, molested by witches, that teenagers are being turned into witches and doing satanic rituals and blah, 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 blah. So you have that moral panic. That this movie is a perfect example of it, and in so many ways. So we'll discuss the many ways as I'm sure that this fits in. The other piece that I wanted to bring up was that this film also is one of the few films, it's an anomaly, where you have a male witch. Now, most of the times where you see male witches are in movies that have covens or families. I've mentioned this in the past. Okay. Usually they're leaders of covens, especially when there's satanic witches going on. It's usually that. Then in other cases, you see them as brothers and fathers, etc., more comedic roles where they're members of the coven, members of the group. Rarely do you see them as the single-handed evil, the way you would see female witches. And during this period of time, most evil witches were either in trios or singular, but they were mostly women. So this is an anomaly in that way too, that you have this male witch. And one thing that was just pointed out, which is a good point, actually, is that the film was filmed in 1988, which you can see on a poster in the actual movie, or it's mentioned. It was released in most of the world in 1989. It didn't get distributed here until 1991. Again, we're still in that period of time of the Satanic Panic, so it works perfectly in this period of time. Why they made a second and third one, I'm not exactly sure. Because it did not do well, so monetarily. So, yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. I think everybody else has lots to say about this movie. And so I think we should just tarry on, or not tarry, or tarry ho, or whatever.
Sally forth.
Sally forth. No, he said, I had a quote. I can't find my quote sheet. He said something funny about tallying, not tallying, or not whatever. You guys do the quotes, not me.
Tarry not. Let's tarry not.
Let's tarry not. There it is, Courtney. I knew I could count on you.
And I think we should talk about the plot for those of the viewers who may not have seen it. So, like Ms. Heather said, it was 1988, 1991. There's a lot going on. 88, 89, 91. Anyway, it's about, it starts in 1691 Boston, which, as we know, anything to do with 1690s and Massachusetts, it's going to be about witchcraft. And of course, what happened? Witch trials. So this gentleman is accused of cavorting with the devil, and he is locked away in a high tower in Boston, and the witch finder tells him that he must confess. And the man accused says that Satan will save him. And then, of course, the devil wind blows, which is what usually happens when the devil wind blows. Anyway, he ends up by being transported from Boston 1691 to Los Angeles 1987, 88, 91. Anyway, he gets transported to Los Angeles, same time as the Terminator, by the way. And along the way, this son of the devil, he has to gather these three pieces of this satanic grimoire. One is found in an altar table, one is found in an attic in a Mennonite in Colorado, and one, of course, is back in Boston. And along the way, there's a lot of murder, a lot of mayhem. He is followed by his arch nemesis, who, of course, is the witch finder, falls in love with a girl who's been cast a spell. She only goes along with it because she does not want to be 80 years old and be 20. She wants to be 20 years old. And of course, as you go along through the way, a lot of mishaps happen. There's a lot of murder. There's a lot of man flying around, a lot of dirt hitting. It's a plot point. There's a lot of dirt hitting. He finds all of the manuscripts. They get to the cemetery where this final piece is being held. And they find out, unfortunately, that no longer is the cemetery sacred ground. So it's not consecrated to the church anymore because they've moved the bodies so they could put in a condo or a dump. I think they said both, but you could put in a condo or a dump. And in 1987, that was actually the same thing, by the way. So they fight good versus evil. And she gets cast into the Boston Harbor. She comes out. She's a diabetic, by the way. She comes out with needles now full of salt water, and she stabs the villain, the son of the devil, in the neck, and the salt water scourges through his veins, and he blows up in this epic 1987 way, and she has this touching moment with the hero where he tells her, I love you, but we're not from the same time. And then the wind blows again, and he ends up by being put in the cemetery where he was supposed to be buried. And she takes the last remaining manuscript and she buries it in the salt flats. The end, roll credits.
And everyone breathes a sigh of relief that this film is now over. I think that's really was one of my favorite parts of the whole movie right there.
The end,
guys. I have notes.
Okay.
If I could share some, because I can't contain myself. I'm gonna say something that's gonna be controversial and brave at the same time. I loved this movie so much because, as I've talked about before, I love movies that are so stupid that like they're just like I don't know, that whole genre of like stupid horror. And to me, this hit it so hard because it was just so ridiculous. But like I feel like I can't do my thoughts justice without reading some of my notes to you because I was taking them in real time as I was reading. So to set the stage, you know, as someone who works in Salem, every single time I see this trope in a movie, it's like, oh boy, here we go with the Puritans and the wrong facts and the everything else. So I was like, oh, like I'm going to sit through another one of these movies and I'm going to hate it and whatever. And then they were in the tower with them and they said, first I noticed they walked past the gallows, which also had the sticks, like they were going to burn it. And I was like, that doesn't seem like the thing that happens. And then to my delight, they announced, thou shall be hanged and then burned over a basket of living cats. And I was like, hello? So I was I was in tune at that moment. I knew it was going to be great. Also, they called him an obscene wretch. And I feel like I'm going to need a t-shirt with one of those like, hello, my name is stickers with obscene.
Killed my father, prepare to die.
Yes,
wrong movie.
And then I wrote down, why is the jailer dude a Viking? Because it didn't seem right that like you had all like the Puritan people and then like the furs. I didn't get that, but I was excited about it. Then moving on to, I was just enthralled the whole time. And then when he went to the metaphysical shop and the lady was like, hello.
Yeah.
And then
I like how she closed the shop too in the middle of the day. Right? She did her workshop and then immediately at 3 p.m. she closed the store like good shop owners do.
And then he comes out from the back with like this phallic shaped crystal, right? And then but the fake orgasm channeling with the phallic shaped crystal was like too much. That's what I wrote down. That was a lot. And I was like, this lady is excited. And then I have another quote where she said, what was her name? Cassandra the K says, that Warlock, the guy who finger paints in body fluids. Yep. Score. Then we come to the scene where he's like talking to the kid. So I'm sitting there and he's talking to this kid and like no one else is around in the town because they're all at church. So it's just this one kid and like the devil guy. And the kid says, my dad hates all that stuff about Jesus and the 12 apostrophes, which I
That was great.
Yeah. But then I wrote, and this is the part that I like need to read to you guys verbatim, because I wrote, why is he just hanging out playing football with a kid? And then the next bullet point was, oh, with and then what was his name? Redfern says, Satanists paint their faces, not goodly women. I thought that was exciting. Then him flying around with the whip around his foot like a leash. I lost my ever-loving mind. I had to rewind it and watch it like 4 times because he was just like, and then of course every time he flies, he's just like. So I was screaming. And then when they're in the airport and she's trying to get Redfern on the plane and he's like, men go in that box and they fly. And she's like, yeah, men like us. And she like made a face. I was like, yeah, men like us, get him. And then he said, over my rotting corpse, which is very exciting. But my favorite quote is when Redfern's trying to convince the priest why they need to see or know about the book, the other part of the book, and he says, "Our interest lies in stopping those who would see all good falter. It lies in stopping the powers of misrule from coming of age. It lies in finding that damned book and thwarting a vile beast of a man who shall not rest until God himself is thrown down and all of creation becomes Satan's black hell's besmeared farting hole." And then she looks at him and she goes, "Well, you asked." So then now I'm in the graveyard scene, and I wrote down, Redfern having a crisis over his grave was the most overacted, hilarious thing I've ever seen in my life. And then I wrote, the way fireworks launched out of his skin at the end was so appropriate for the 4th of July. So when he started bursting into flame, it wasn't like little flames came out. It was like little like rockets of fireworks came out of his skin.
And the Redfern's red glare.
See, it was perfect. And then lastly, I wrote Redfern's Ghost NATO at the end because he turned into a Ghost NATO. And I'm sorry, but like none of these are cons. All of these are pros. I was sad when the movie was over. It could have been 2 more hours for me. I want to watch the sequels. I hope they're as delightful.
The quotes are on point. I found the movie so quotable that I made notes, most of which Courtney got to, because like Jesus and the 12 apostrophes should be a shirt or a band name. That was classic. But Cassandra with a K also said at one point, "Ask me anything. I took 2 years of high school," which I thought was a great line.
That was a good line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
For me, I'm LA born and raised, Los Angeles born and raised, and I was here in those late 80s, and I was at those goofy ass metaphysical stores in the late 80s, like the Bodhi Tree. Anybody in LA know? It's what it was. Even the weird mediums, the orgasmic mediums, it was so new and so theatrical and so new age. And so I just cracked up the entire time, up and down Hollywood Boulevard. I live on Hollywood Boulevard, watching. It's like, oh wait, they're right in front of. Oh wait, oh no, it doesn't look like that anymore at all. And all the skateboardy things, trying to so hard make it what everything was of the day. That the hypnotist. I didn't really pay attention to the plot line very much.
There wasn't one. I'm good at telling a story, and I got to the point where I went.
And the girl.
I beg to differ. I think it had a great plot, honestly.
The poor girl. At 20, I wanted to fix her hair. At 40, I wanted to fix her hair. You need a little conditioning. I guess I don't remember that thing from the 80s, but but I just got everything. Even and then when they went to the desert, I mean, I know those desert towns too. It's like, oh yeah. So that was great. And the other thing, the overacting, the over his grave, I did not get that at all either. It's like, well, you're dead.
He's not going to live 300 years.
He expected to be alive in 1988. I mean, like most of us have that reasonable expectation to live 300 years.
He was having like not a midlife crisis, but like a triple life crisis, and that was my favorite. It was just so dramatic.
Yes. And yeah, the little boy scene with the Jesus. I enjoyed all those little bits and pieces that were so horrible. But we have to get into how it didn't hold up.
I have to say, though, speaking of that, that scene did bother me. Actually, I will tell you, there's one thing that bothers me in this movie. There's some homophobic things that bothers me a lot. The major thing that bothers me is, why the hell do they have this Satanist wearing a black puffy shirt? What Satanist wears a black ruffly puffy shirt? Really? I mean, you would think that they would get it right, that we don't do that sort of thing. I digress. So there is something that really bothered me, though. I mean, and again, I get it. We're in the heart of the satanic panic, we are in the AIDS crisis.
Mhm.
And so there is a lot of panic. I get it. But what kills me is he crashes through the window, and then they revive him. They bring him back to life. And then he kisses the guy roommate who's gay, and then bites his tongue out and does all kinds of things. And so when the police are called, and she's, what's her name? I don't even remember. 40, 80, 60, whatever.
Cassandra with a K.
With a K. Circle K, I think. Anyway, when Circle K is in the police station, the police say, "You said that your roommate was gay." And she says, "He's gay, not queer. There's a difference. He doesn't diddle little boys in the bathroom." And then the Satanist who kissed the guy, who obviously was not afraid of expressing things that could be associated with sex, he literally preys on a little boy. And I went, oh, I don't like any of that. I don't like that at all. So that was my moment of, I think without that, I could have really laughed. Like when, for instance, they get to the airport, and she, without any ID, because he's 300 years old, he just boards this plane like he's getting on some city bus. And then he has that weather vane. He gets on a plane with a weather vane. What?
Pre-TSA.
Yeah, I think you have to, I mean, we say this about a lot of movies, and it doesn't have to be a witch movie. There are a lot of movies that we look back and we look at our current moral standards and ethics and the way culture changes and look at them and say, oh, that's a problem with that movie. And absolutely correctly, we have to point them out when they happen, as well as current ones too, you know, when there are faux pas like we've done in the past. In the case of this one, you're looking at the moral crisis that was occurring. You know, AIDS was wrapped up. The AIDS crisis was wrapped up in the satanic panic. They weren't, you can't separate the two because one contributed to the other. Not that the satanic panic caused the AIDS crisis, but the AIDS crisis gave more reason to yes, the fuel to the fire. So you have these linked here, and that's a really good point. And I think the scene with the child, which I actually speak about in the movie and actually quote directly, because there's a couple pieces in it that are really interesting for my study. But that scene is exactly that scene, and then the scene that you pointed out, Richard-Lael, are the two scenes that really pin this movie down into that satanic panic era. Because the biggest fear in the satanic panic, one was, of course, the fear of AIDS, the fear of queer folk harming children, which is linked to the fear of Satanists harming children, and witches harming children, and harming children, and harming children. And what are the, you know, we have to keep our children safe. That doesn't sound like anything we're experiencing now at all. Just saying. But we do repeat on cycles. But this particular thing, this is very grounded, and we can look at, but what's interesting to me is, I think someone pointed out, obviously, that it's a bad projection of witches. Yes, very most certainly it is. But we can like movies from this period and have fun with them, even though they don't represent witchcraft and witches very well. And then others we can't. And that's the interesting conversation that I like to have with myself. Why do people love Hocus Pocus? Even though they were also trying to harm children, but this movie doesn't stand up. This movie doesn't get the following. And I think that's an interesting conversation to have, because why do we love Hocus Pocus, and why is it more successful on its second go 20 years later, 30 years later, whatever it's been? And then yet this one's harmful.
Well, I mean, you don't see Bette Midler drinking child fat in Hocus Pocus.
They were kind of doing that, though. I don't know about it.
But I mean, it was pretty blatant though in this movie. I mean, I was like, I couldn't believe that they even showed that in a film. I mean, it was very especially that scene was pretty hilarious up until that moment, and then to see something like so just disgusting was really a surprise.
They were just sucking the life juice out of children. That was Bette Midler's, rather than actually drinking fat. So
yes, yeah,
but yeah, it's there's a tone difference.
Healthier. But it's weird too, because it's even looking at 89, queer was a negative word, now it's a positive word.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, like I said, I get that it is. I get it. It's the 80s. I get the Satanic Panic. I get the AIDS crisis. I get the moral majority. I get Ronald Reagan, Reaganomics. I get it. I remember it. Because I was 300 and some years old at that point, so I clearly remember it.
Yeah, and that's just it. It's there's something about this one that's more distasteful than looking at like Hocus Pocus. When we look back, there's something about it that's worse. And this one also has the message which Hocus Pocus doesn't have, that you will be okay and safe from Satanists if you attend church. That whole scene is the Satanic Panic in its core, that entire scene, because not only is it Satanists and witches trying to harm children, it's also Satanists can be anybody. And if you allow your children not to attend church, if you don't believe, then you will be a victim. So that's essentially the Satanic Panic right there in that scene. And
there's that the whole line of questioning too, where he Redfield or whatever his name was, Redfern, came up and said, I don't know what his name is.
Redfield,
Redfield, I don't know.
Red, whatever his name is. I liked him, but whatever. Where he came up questioning the grieving mother at that scene and was like, was he baptized? And she was, how can you ask me this? No, it's important. Was he baptized? And I think that I was not conscious through that whole time because I was very, very young. And looking back on it, I can't believe that human beings acted that ridiculous, much like I feel today, which I think adds to, that's why it's all, for me, I mean, I agree. It doesn't, those pieces don't stand up, nor should they, but it's all in that fantastical, ridiculous, in my brain.
It is fantastic and ridiculous. Even looking back, now, those of you who know, I grew up Pentecostal in the height of the Satanic Panic. I got to celebrate Halloween one time before my church. They had this minister came in, and I think it was, what was it called? It was something about. It was a famous book. He was an author of a book. And this was a long time ago. He was an author of this book, and I couldn't celebrate Halloween anymore. And I couldn't watch the Smurfs because they were swamp demons. And I couldn't watch He-Man because He-Man and Skeletor get the same power from Grayskull. And She-Ra, and that killed me because I loved She-Ra. I mean, I knew I was gay then. I loved She-Ra, and She-Ra was the same as He-Man, and so I couldn't have that either. And Queen, if you play it backwards, they sing "It's fun to smoke marijuana," which is not what Freddie hated marijuana, so that was not intentional if that was what it came out. But it was this whole thing. We couldn't listen to Led Zeppelin, and then subsequently that year, from the time I was 6 until I was 21, no, I was 20, I did not celebrate Halloween. And for the first 10 or 15 years, I was taken out of school, and we were forced to listen to this cassette tape that my parents got from this Pentecostal church talking about how witches wanted to eat your children and murder them and turn them into homosexuals.
And that hasn't gone away in some quarters too. I had an employee at a coffee shop I managed. This was maybe 15 years ago. And she was always scared at Halloween because she would tell the stories of what her church said about what was happening. And I was like, me, I don't eat babies. I mean, and all the other arguments. but all this just is continuing. It never has really gone away. It's just less in kind of people's brains in the bigger culture, but it's still there.
I just thought
I really eat are the unfertilized kind. I eat eggs. I do eat eggs.
That's not what I thought you were saying.
No, I eat eggs.
I am gonna just excuse myself because that's not where I thought that was going.
The other thing what I found about the movie, besides all the good, the bad, the ugly, all that, is that nobody was very likable. I just
I liked Redfern a lot.
Oh, he's awful.
I just can't.
Like, I liked Redfern. Like, I would have gone 300 years in the past to like stroke that fur. You know?
I mean,
That is so funny.
I have to say that Laurie Singer. So back in the 80s, and some of you may remember this, but there was the movie Fame in the early 80s, right? And then there was the TV show. I was addicted to the TV show, and I watched every episode. And it was all about the high school performing arts where I wanted to go, which I didn't get to go to, but that's another story. But Laurie Singer was in it. She was the celloist. Okay. So whenever I see Laurie Singer, all I can hear, I had to look up the old songs even, and I had to play one because all I can think about was that. But she's more known for Footloose. So, you see that and it's like, oh. And then, it's funny because I looked her up a little bit and did some research, and she's actually the sister of Mark Singer. And if you, which, watching this movie and then thinking about Mark Singer made me laugh even further because Mark Singer is best known for The Beastmaster, another classic 1980s movie. If you haven't seen
Beastmaster has higher production values though than what we just watched.
Let me just tell you, Jason, I agree with you entirely. I think I saw Beastmaster like probably 15 or 20 times during the 80s. Mm-hmm. I mean, talking to animals. I mean, who wants? I mean, who
he had pet ferrets. Right? He had pet ferrets.
He had all the things. He did. He can talk to anybody. Mm-hmm. Or any animal. So I started laughing, and that just made me laugh. And I actually laughed my way through this movie, Courtney. So I see the value in it. But when they came away from the scene we've been discussing with the child, and then the cop is there, and the thing starts to go up, and he's looking, and then they first show him flying. I burst out loud. I just burst out loud. I said, "Oh my God, what am I watching?"
It was so when he had the whip, no, like in addition to that, but when he had the whip attached to his ankle and he was like so angry about it, and he was like trying to like angrily fly away, but like very stiffly. Like I don't know. I had to rewind it because I was like tears were pouring from my eyes. Like it was literally my favorite. Oh yeah, the salting and the licking of the whip in the car where he was like chewing it, like masticating the whip in his mouth to get the salt on it. Ridiculous.
I think one thing that we're talking about these characters is the one thing that we haven't mentioned yet is why we chose this movie. Because of the actor that played the Warlock, Julian Sands. And so I don't know. I take it many of the people are listening to us right now did actually know that he just passed away, or they just found his body because he had been lost for how long? Months, I think. Months. Where was he hiking? Somewhere in California, I believe.
San Bernardino, Riverside area. So a greater Los Angeles area, just into the deeper valley, Inland Empire. Yeah. And he was supposed to be a good hiker.
And he's good in this movie. Like, as much as we mock this movie, he's really good in this movie. He has a presence and a power when he's on screen. And
he was so good looking. I really, in my ideal world, I thought it would be a little like Elvira, and where you've got the witch finders who are not very good people, and then you have the male witch. Okay, maybe he's not so good, but he's kind of laughable. And maybe he's the romantic lead. Maybe he comes to the future and he wants to spread the gospel of Hail Satan. And then I realized that's only me. But no, he was good looking. He was so good. His presence was he was perfect for the role.
And he was so rock and roll.
With his
like every time he came on screen, I would get like, it was like I was a little kid that couldn't sit still. Like I'd kick my feet. I'd be like, yes, it's happening. Like, what else is he gonna do? And then he'd be like flying around in his and I'd be like, this is the best thing I've ever seen.
I think that I think when they get on, I laughed, especially since I've been watching some older movies when they do I think it's when they're walking into the cemetery and it's clearly a soundstage. Yeah. It's so badly a soundstage. I'm like, this is what am I looking at? A 1940s movie? It was like, it didn't feel like it was good enough for the 80s. I'm like, what in the world? So there were a lot of moments.
I cracked up when he's on that same soundstage of the cemetery, and they're in between the consecrated ground and the non-consecrated ground, and they're fighting. And Redfern tells the Satanist, the Warlock, he says, "How does it feel?" as sparks are flying from his face, and then he reaches up with the one hand and he puts the hand in his mouth, and then of course now Redfern is on fire too. And I went, how does it feel? Well, now you know. Ask a dumb question, you get a dumb answer. I did laugh at that one.
Wait, can we talk really quick about the part where he has him on the leg leash with the whip, and then he disappears with into that barn thing, and Redfern's holding the weather vane ready to get him, and it's then the whip drops. It's very tense. The whip drops, and then all of a sudden out comes he's gonna come flying out, but when he comes flying out, he's the size of Tinkerbell, and he's so bad. He was the window was this big, and he was this big, and he came flying out very seriously and stiff this little like a bumblebee, and I was like, why is he so small? And it's so funny.
That's
oh
funny.
my god!
I mean, oh my gosh!
He made it clear in the beginning that witches don't need, or warlocks don't need brooms to fly, but I think he should have had a broom.
I think he should have just flown on the weather vane.
That would have been great.
Yeah.
Oh, this was so funny.
Can we talk about Laurie Singer's age makeup throughout the film? Because that is a new level of bad for makeup. Yeah. Reading about this, she actually refused some of the things that were agreed upon, so they couldn't really age her up like they wanted to. But as someone who grew up loving Footloose, and then for having a crush on Laurie Singer, I guess when she was supposed to be so old in her 40s, I was like, she just looks the same. There was nothing, and then finally at the end, her face was sort of puffy, and it almost looked like she had fangs or something. It was just such a right. I'm not making that up.
I didn't. Is it 2 dimes, or is it fangs, or is it?
No, they had dimes in her mouth. She was holding dimes in her mouth so she could protect herself. But she looked like she had caked on makeup rather than looking like she was aged.
Right.
She looked weird. She didn't look.
It was in the same vein as the orgasmic medium, whoever she was, channeler. When she put her face on, she came up here
nominated for an Academy Award for Best Makeup. This movie was not.
Well, the other interesting thing is, and maybe Richard-Lael can speak to this a little bit better, having his way he grew up, but the concepts of the Satanist and the Satan versus Christian concepts are very much there was a lot of Catholic stuff in there. A lot of stuff was mixed in, but most of the Christians that you visit in this movie are Protestants. In Boston, the Puritans, you have the Mennonite, and the guy knew what Amish was, which I don't know how he knew what Amish was if he was from 1691 Puritan village, but he knew what Amish was. But there was Mennonites. And then I think the other church where the little boy was also Protestant. So there's a lot of Protestant sects going around. And then you have this based on this Catholic premise. So I don't know if that was problematic, but it was maybe that's too much of nitpicking for me. But I was like, I don't know if they couldn't settle on something.
Well, there is some truth in that, but also as a Puritan, he would not have known the German Mennonites or the Amish because the German settlers didn't really mix well with the Englishers, as they still are called to this day in those circles. So
were they even called, or were they there?
They weren't even there in 1691.
No. Were they even there?
No.
That's the, you know, it was a real mishmash of religion, a Christian religion even. So they were going all kinds of throwing whatever they could at the wall.
I just assumed that he was listening to Amish country radio with Cassandra with a K while they were driving around, catching up on things
in Colorado.
The 20th century. Yeah.
Don't you find it funny though? So this woman thinks that her son has been eaten by a coyote, and his skin has been ripped off according to what was said, and there's not a tear in her eye. Her son is dead in a brutal, horrible way. And excuse me, was he baptized? Why would you ask me that?
Yeah. She was more irritated that her husband or the father would not take the child to church than she was about the child being destroyed. Yeah, I got that.
Wait, I like the Amish people. Those were the only people I liked.
That guy was so serious. When he was like, I am here, he's like, I've been waiting for this day to happen. He was ready. He was locked and loaded. That excited me. When he ran in and the other people were like, what is happening? And who is it? And he comes out of the back room and he's like, yes, I've been waiting and I'm ready. I was like, yes, Amish grandpa, let's go. Get him.
Yeah.
Mennonite.
Oh yeah, Mennonite. Sorry, Mennonite grandpa.
No, I'm going to tell you, the truth. I almost, because I grew up Pentecostal, I almost became a Mennonite because I was all for two Mennonite.
Oh,
And then when I broke away from that, I decided that I would be a Mormon because I'm for all things that are Mormon.
Taking on the road. He's taking on the road.
We'll be here all week. Yeah, and the Mennonite man made a nice large pentacle on the barn. That was lovely. And I'm not sure if that's a Mennonite symbol. I don't think so, but heck, he was into it.
Oh, that's what it was. He was like, they came bursting in and was like, whose witch mark is this? And they were like, who are you? And why are you? And he came out of the closet and he was like, it's my witch mark. And they were like, okay.
And as our producer pointed out, though, Richard E. Grant, who was Red Fern, has been nominated for an Academy Award, and he was in this film, right? I mean, which is incredible when you think about it, because you just don't think of Academy Award winning or at least nominated actors and the Warlock.
I
do.
Speak for yourself. But
had he been nominated before he did this film?
It has to be afterwards. I mean, it would have to be.
Listen, the fact that anyone did this movie with a straight face at all, to me, says that they deserve an award.
2019 was when he was nominated, probably because people had forgotten about Warlock by that point, so he was safe and could be nominated for things.
So, having watched a ton of these witch movies over hundreds for the book, I could say there's a lot of award-winning actors that have done some really bad witch horror films. So he add him to the list. And it's so fun when they do pop up. You're like, oh, look at who that is, and there's some in the 70s. I'll have to get a list and share that at some point. Guess who's in this film? Guess who's in that film? But yeah, anyway, nobody escapes being in a bad film, I think. No, if you have a long enough career.
But I mean, they had a good cast, all things considered. People who are good in other things, and I think they tried to elevate this material as much as they could. It was difficult material to elevate. You know, weather vanes notwithstanding.
That was my favorite.
The weather vane?
I love that weather vane. It's a family heirloom.
Yeah.
They brought it on the plane without a problem. I was horrified. I was like, oh my goodness. They went through the scanners?
Everything about the airport scene is gold. Give me your knife.
The knife and the purse. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you unplug the credit card machine so you can get on a plane?
Yeah.
For free.
Even in the 80s? No.
That's all it takes. Like, you get a free trip if you just unplug the credit card machine. Our computers must be down.
And then, of course, he's this guy, this witch can fly. This warlock can fly. Why would he even know what an aeroplane is anyway? He came from 1691, even as this psychic medium witch. Why would he can fly? He can fly, he can fly, he can fly.
But, I mean, he didn't have an unlimited supply of the fat of unbaptized children, though. I mean, I assume he has to use up that fuel, right? And maybe it couldn't have got him from one side to the other.
He was too busy being a bumblebee in the barn, and he had to...
I wonder how much the recipe was that called. How much did he have to use for one flight? How long did he go? How many miles did he go?
Yeah, it wasn't a lot. He didn't have a lot in there, so I don't know.
He only had a little pot of it.
He was a little bitty kid, and he didn't look like he was a chubby kid, you know.
No.
Yeah.
I thought that kid nailed his scenes too. I thought that kid was one of the best parts of the movie. I was so mad when Tubi gave me commercials right in the middle of that scene.
That's the only, honestly, I watched this a bunch of years ago for the book. And the only scene I remember was that scene because it was so poignant. I didn't remember all of the other joys of the movie. So it was except for that scene. And of course I wrote about it because of this. The conversation also talks about the Wizard of Oz. You can't be a witch because you're a boy, but only girls are witches. So there's a lot of things in that scene that were poignant and good for my discussion and my study. So that's the only scene I remembered was that particular scene. I think it really stands out.
Did any of you ever watch Step by Step? The TV show?
Yeah.
The little boy was on Step by Step as JT.
No way.
Yes. Yeah. I keep Wikipedia on my phone while we do the show just for important nuggets like that. And he was on Baywatch for a year too. I mean, the kid had a pretty decent career, and he owes it all to Warlock.
The best movie of all time.
He got on Baywatch because he lost all of that fat on Warlock.
Right? You keep up with David Hasselhoff that way.
Yeah. Nail on the dirt, Richard-Lael. You got the nail on the dirt right there.
That was actually, I loved that part. Cracked me up.
I like the nailing. Ow! Yeah.
Oh, that just reminded me of the other part when she was old. She got turned old, and then they were trying to figure out what to do, and all of a sudden it cuts to them on like the cliffside, and she's screaming, to scream out her frustrations, and the camera like pans over to her, and she's just like, but like letting out this like blood curdling scream with no emotion on her face, and then she's like, well, that didn't help. And I was like, why? She's clearly not screaming. She was just like, okay. Oh my god, this movie's so good.
Well, maybe gotten close enough. Thank you, everybody in the chat room. You've got some really great comments and observations and opinions. And we have one last thing to do, and that is to wands up or wands down on the Warlock.
This is so hard because it's a terrible movie.
It's a terrible movie.
And yet it is weirdly entertaining in its own way.
It's very entertaining.
This might be my favorite one that we've done.
Wow. I know we have wiggly wands tonight. We have wiggly wands.
Not me. If I could hold up a phallic shaped crystal, I would.
I know for Courtney's birthday, we're going to have to watch Warlock 2 Electric Boogaloo. And so, probably going to be traveling that week.
Just so you know, that's coming up at the end of August. And my birthday is a Thursday, so it'll be the eve of my birthday that I will choose Warlock 2 Electric Boogaloo. Because that's definitely what I'm picking.
Okay. I think it's Armageddon. Although Electric Boogaloo would be better.
We've got mostly wands up. We got wands up for Julian. We got wands up from Kelvin, wands up from Janet, wands neutral from Robert, up from Tabitha, up for nostalgia from Colin. That's why mine is a little more than halfway is the nostalgia and the LA stuff and the funny Bodhi tree. So
all of that
mine is
get over the
down.
I have wands up for Satan's black hell besmeared farting hole. So
I mean, I would have to give this movie at least 10 points just for Jesus and the apostrophes, which was like one of my favorite lines since we've been doing this show.
Yeah, it's a good one. All right, so you guys get to decide for yourself. This is a mixed, definitely not one of our. We're all unanimous about everything, except that we all wiggle a little bit. So
I don't.
Me neither.
Yes, way up, way down, and a lot of wiggles in the middle. Ah!
Mine is mostly down.
Do it. I know wiggly ones, but it works with the film. Do we know what we're doing next week yet? Have we talked about this?
We did not talk about it yet. So we'll have to do that. We'll have to do that and post very quickly within a short while.
Yes, we will have to. Summer, can we do?
Yes, we can.
We do a series. Oh, our producer is asking us in the secret world if we could do a series of something. So what's a series that anybody would like to do?
Sabrina, the new one. Oh, sorry. That was a lot.
Scarlet Witch. WandaVision.
Oh, we got some things we got some options.
All right. We will have to discuss in private. So on that note, everybody check in what's going on with everybody. We did not do that in the beginning. What's going on, Jason?
Next week, I will be at the Starwood Festival in Southern Ohio. We will see. The internet is good. We will see how many drums you hear in the background while I chat with all of you. That'll be really fun. And then the next week, I'm going to be in Michigan visiting my old town that I lived in before California, which is always sad and exciting all at the same time. And tonight, I'm repping this shirt from the Sojourner, which is a really great witchcraft bookstore in Greenville, North Carolina, owned by the great Heron Michelle, who wrote the book Elemental Witchcraft. I just wanted to give her a little shout out because she needs it and I love her.
Beautiful. Thank you. Richard-Lael.
Well, I will be in Atlanta the 2nd of September, I think. I can't remember now. It's the debauchery ball. I think there's a thing that we have if it's still up, but there's that. I'll be in Atlanta. There it is. So yes, Saturday, September 2nd. So I will be in Atlanta then. I will be in Youngstown, Ohio in October. And also you can find me anywhere Gentlemen Psychics are sold. I'm easy to be found. And that's about it.
Thank you very much. Heather.
Well, thank you. I am going to be next week at Mystic South. We begin on Friday of next week and go through the weekend, 3 days of witchy, mystical, and magical folk coming together for classes. We're going to have a great time. And just to reiterate support for Sojourners, Sojourners is actually going to be live and in person at Mystic South, running our bookstore and our author signings with the lovely Heron Michelle. She will be there. She's actually one of my authors, and I was looking to see if I could hold up a copy of her book, but I can't seem to locate it. It's in alphabetical order, supposed to be on my back shelf, but she and her crew will be there live, having author signings, running our bookstore, along with 500 of her closest witchy friends from around the country. So we hope that some of you are listening are going to be there as well. Mystic South. There's the book, Elemental Witchcraft. It's a great beginner book. And so, anyway, so that's what I'm doing next week. I'm on the board, so I'll be running around. If you're there, stop me and say hello. I run around with a walkie-talkie on, directing traffic most of the time, and I will be doing some presentations. And other than that, I can be found heathergreene.net. You can look there to find my articles, my links, my socials. I'm on most of the socials. I post, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all the things. There's my book, Lights, Camera, Witchcraft. Buy it to follow along. And other than that, there's my book. Yay. Other than that, say hello on socials, and I will hope to, hope to see somebody at Mystic South next week. I'm really excited, but that's all that's going on for me.
Mystic South is great too. I've been a lot of times. Heather does such a wonderful job at that festival. If you're in the South and you can drive to Atlanta, it is totally worth your time. You'll have a really, really awesome weekend. Come
for the day or come for the weekend.
Beautiful. Thank you. Someone scanned the QR code. I just saw it right across the screen. Okay. Courtney.
Oh, that's me. So surprise, guys. Guess what? I am planning a trip out to LA with a friend of mine. It is not set in stone as far as times or dates, but it's looking like maybe the week of August 7th, 8th, 9th, that whole area. So if anybody's around, let me know. And if anybody has any fun things to do, let me know. Patty, I'll have to come and see you, obviously.
Yes, lots of fun things.
Yep, so that's about it. Other than that, I'm just enjoying my summer vacation. Ready to watch some witchy series and get back into that. And streaming some horror games on Twitch. You can find me at The Themes on all the socials, including Twitch, where you can come and scare me while I'm playing them. Also, you can catch up on old episodes of Scared and Alone at scaredandalone.com, where I am Ghostbait. And I will also be busy hugging my Richard-Lael pillow. And that's it.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you, Robert. You're so active. I'm actually flying off to Ohio this week to film, but nobody can go there. But for LA folks, on July 15th, my dog's going to be running the Wiener Nationals to try to be the fastest wiener in the West.
What?
Yes, she's vying for fastest wiener in the West. So if you're anywhere near Orange, LA County, come cheer on the Willow. The next night, I'm going to be doing a seance and ghost hunt with my friend Linda the Ghost Hunter for the very first ever seance and ghost hunt at the Hollywood Women's Club. It's 100 years old. It's all the stars used to hang there. It's had fires. It's had schools, everything that seems to go along with a haunted place. And it's right in the middle of Hollywood. So we're doing that on the 16th. And that's it for my July travel. August, I will be at Hex Fest. I'm teaching 3 different classes and a panel. Then later in August, I'm going to be at Michigan Paracon, way up in Sault Ste. Marie. Doing all sorts of fun things. So check us out. Check us all out everywhere. And then I don't know where I'm going after that. Then I'm going to Mass Paracon and Orange County Paracon, then Vulture City Paracon. So come join us everywhere, you guys. Like us and follow us on all our social medias. For whatever reason, it makes all the difference in the world. Check out our stuff and let us, what I think we should get our page on Facebook more busy. Like, people should come talk on it and we should go look at it. I'm just spitballing here. Like, tell us what series and what movies you guys want us to do. Oh, it's saying that right there. What I thought it and it appeared on stage.
Magic!
She's a true witchcraft.
Burn me. I need a broom to fly.
I assume we'll be on Threads soon too, the new alternative to Twitter.
Threads is the new. Again, I don't know anything.
Another new one.
Yeah, it's owned by Facebook, but I mean, we all needed another social media outlet in our lives, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are almost to that point. So yeah, you guys, whether it's tagging us, which is Movie Coven, please tag us. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like if you're nice about it, or don't be nice about it. We have a good sense of humor most of the time.
Most of the time.
Yeah. But check out our Facebook page, and we know we're getting there. I just yelling at me. Okay, one more thing that we do. Wishes, are we ready? And you guys out there do it too. 1, 2, 3.